The airplane door closed with a dull, final thud, the kind of sound that carried weight. Once it shut, there was no stepping back, no changing your mind, no easy exits. Everyone inside the aircraft was now committed to the same journey, whether they liked it or not. Soft yellow lights filled the first-class cabin. The scent of leather seats mixed with brewed coffee and expensive cologne. Conversations were low and controlled, the kind spoken by people accustomed to being comfortable in places like this. Laptops were already open. Champagne glasses clinked quietly. Jackets were folded without a second thought. In seat 2D, closest to the aisle, sat Renee Williams. She was 31, black, well-dressed in a charcoal blazer and tailored trousers. Her posture was straight, composed, but her fingers tightened slightly around the armrest as the aircraft began to push back. She glanced down at her boarding pass again, as if confirming something she already knew. First class, C2D. She slid the pass back into her bag and stared forward. The window across the aisle reflected her face faintly, calm on the surface, guarded underneath. Across from her, a middle-aged white man in a navy suit noticed her glance and quickly looked away. 2 rows back, a woman leaned sideways, whispering something to her companion. Renee felt it without seeing it. That familiar sensation. The quiet scrutiny. The unspoken question. The aisle curtain parted, and a flight attendant stepped through. Her name badge read Elaine Foster. Elaine moved with confidence, heels clicking softly, scanning seats with trained efficiency. She smiled at one passenger, nodded at another, then slowed when her eyes landed on Renee. She stopped. Just stopped. Elaine looked at Renee, then at the seat number, then back at Renee again. "Excuse me," Elaine said, her smile polite but tight. "May I see your boarding pass?" Renee hesitated for half a second. She hadn't been asked this on any other flight in months, but she reached into her bag anyway. "Sure," she said evenly. Elaine took the pass and studied it longer than necessary. Her brow creased slightly. "This is first class," Elaine said. "Yes," Renee replied. "I know." Elaine tilted her head. "Are you sure you're in the correct section?" Renee blinked once. "I'm in my assigned seat." Elaine glanced down the aisle, then back at Renee. Her voice lowered, though it still carried. "Economy's further back. Sometimes passengers get confused." Renee felt her jaw tighten. She kept her tone calm. "I'm not confused." Elaine smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Did you get upgraded at the gate?" "No." Elaine studied her face. "So you paid for this seat?" "Yes." A brief pause hung between them. Elaine exhaled through her nose. "All right, just wait here. I am seated," Renee said quietly. Elaine didn't respond. She walked away. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Conversations resumed, but quieter now. Renee could feel eyes on her without turning her head. Somewhere behind her, a phone lifted slightly, angled just enough to record. Minutes passed. Elaine returned, this time with another flight attendant, an older man with silver hair and a softer expression. He smiled kindly at Renee. "Hello, ma'am. There seems to be some confusion about seating." "There isn't," Renee replied, "but I'm happy to clarify." She handed him her boarding pass. He scanned it quickly. His expression changed almost immediately. "This seat is correct," he said, handing it back. Elaine stiffened beside him. "But she didn't board with first class," Elaine said. Renee looked up sharply. "Boarding was delayed. I stood exactly where I was instructed." The man frowned. "Everything checks out." Elaine crossed her arms. "I just find it unusual." The word hung in the air, loaded with meaning. "Unusual how?" Renee asked. Elaine didn't answer. The man shifted uncomfortably. "Let's move on," he said quietly, already stepping away. Elaine stayed. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Enjoy your flight," she said. Then, barely above a whisper, she added 7 words. "You people always try to sit here." Renee's breath caught. For a moment, she wondered if she'd imagined it. She hadn't? "What did you say?" Renee asked. Elaine straightened. "Nothing. You said something," Renee replied. Her voice was steady, but her heart pounded. Elaine shrugged. "Don't start trouble." Renee stood slowly, deliberately, her movements controlled. "I want you to repeat what you said." Elaine's lips pressed into a thin line. "Sit down." "I will." Renee said. After you explain yourself. Elaine placed a hand on Renee's arm. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Don't touch me, Renee said. Elaine tightened her grip. You're being disruptive. Renee pulled her arm free. You insulted me. Now you're putting your hands on me. Phones were fully raised now. No one was pretending anymore. A voice from behind cut through the tension. She didn't do anything. Elaine's voice sharpened. Ma'am, if you don't comply, I'll involve the captain. Please do, Renee said. Elaine pressed the intercom. Captain, we have an uncooperative passenger in first class. Renee let out a short laugh. Uncooperative because I won't accept being insulted. The cabin fell silent. The captain's voice crackled through the speaker. What's the situation? Renee spoke clearly, projecting her voice without shouting. I paid for this seat. I was questioned repeatedly about my right to be here. I was referred to as you people, and I was touched without consent. A pause followed. A long one. Elaine, the captain said, step away from the passenger immediately. Elaine's face drained of color. Another attendant will take over service, the captain continued. We'll address this after landing. Elaine stepped back slowly. She didn't look at Renee. A quiet murmur spread through the cabin. Someone clapped once, then another. Not loud, but enough. Renee sat down. Her hands shook now that the adrenaline was fading. She pressed them together in her lap. The flight continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. The woman across the aisle stared at her tray table. The man in the suit avoided eye contact. A younger passenger leaned forward slightly. You handled that with dignity, he said. Renee nodded. I didn't want to have to. When the plane landed, no one rushed to stand. 2 airline managers boarded before passengers disembarked. They approached Renee directly. Ms. Williams, one said, we'd like to apologize. Renee looked past them, toward the galley, where Elaine stood stiff and pale. I want a written report, Renee said, and her name. Elaine looked down. The managers nodded. Later, in the terminal, Renee walked alone. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Notifications, messages, videos already spreading. She stopped near a large window overlooking the runway. Planes moved in the distance, orderly and silent. She took a deep breath. For the first time since boarding, she allowed herself to relax. She typed a short message and posted it. I didn't ask for special treatment. I asked to be treated fairly. Then she slipped her phone back into her bag and walked forward, head high, leaving the noise behind her. Renee didn't notice she was holding her breath until her chest began to ache. Only then did she release it, slowly, as if any sudden movement might pull the moment back into chaos. The line at the jet bridge moved forward, passengers filing out one by one, murmuring softly, eyes darting between her and their phones. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked embarrassed. A few looked annoyed, as if the discomfort of witnessing injustice bothered them more than the injustice itself. As Renee stepped into the terminal, the artificial chill of the airport air wrapped around her. She adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder, her movements automatic now, muscle memory carrying her forward while her mind lagged behind, replaying every word, every look, every second Elaine's hand had been on her arm. She hated that part most. Not the words, not even the accusation, the touch. It followed her like a shadow. Behind her, she heard hurried footsteps. Excuse me. Renee slowed but didn't turn immediately. She had learned, over years of navigating spaces like this, that urgency often meant one thing, someone else wanting control of the narrative. A man in a dark blazer caught up to her. Airline badge, corporate smile. My name is Daniel, he said. I'm the customer relations manager on duty. Renee met his eyes. I figured. He nodded awkwardly. If you'd be willing, we'd like to speak with you privately. She considered him for a moment. People streamed around them, rolling luggage, voices echoing off polished floors. This airport had seen thousands of moments like hers, most forgotten within hours. All right, she said, but I'm recording. Daniel's smile faltered, then returned. That's completely fine. They stepped into a small glass-walled office just off the terminal corridor. Another manager joined them, a woman with tight curls and a pinched expression that suggested she'd already heard the story but only one version of it. Daniel gestured to a chair. Renee remained standing. I'd like to start by apologizing, he said. What you experienced does not reflect our values. Renee let out a quiet laugh. Not amused, tired. It reflects something, she replied. The woman shifted uncomfortably. The attendant involved has been removed from duty, pending an investigation. Renee nodded slowly. Daniel cleared his throat. We'd also like to offer compensation for the distress. I don't want miles, Renee said. I don't want vouchers. Silence settled in the room. I want accountability, she continued. And I want to know how many times this has happened before. Neither manager answered. That was answer enough. After several minutes, Renee left the office with a stack of paperwork and promises that sounded carefully worded. She walked back into the terminal, feeling strangely hollow. Vindication didn't come with relief the way movies promised it would. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she checked it. Her screen was flooded. Messages from friends, from co-workers, from strangers. Her video had crossed 1 million views. She scrolled through comments without meaning to. She handled that so well. This happens all the time. Why do they always question black women? She should have stayed quiet. She's making it about race. Renee locked her phone. She didn't want to read the rest. At baggage claim, she stood alone, watching suitcases circle endlessly. A woman beside her glanced over. You're the one from the plane, right? Renee stiffened slightly. Yes, the woman nodded. I was sitting 3 rows back. I saw everything. Renee waited. I should have said something sooner, the woman added. I'm sorry. Renee studied her face. The sincerity was there. So was the guilt. Thank you, Renee said, for saying something now. The woman smiled weakly and turned back to the carousel. Renee collected her bag and headed for the exit. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual indifference. Cars honked. People hurried. Life continued. That night, alone in her hotel room, Renee finally let herself sit with it. She replayed the moment Elaine had looked at her boarding pass and then at her face, as if one cancelled out the other. The way "are you sure" had carried more weight than the words themselves. The way the cabin had gone quiet when the insult slipped out, everyone suddenly aware of the truth they'd been pretending not to see. She thought about how easily it could have gone differently. If she'd raised her voice, if she'd cried, if she'd backed down, any of those would have rewritten this story in someone else's favor. Her phone buzzed again, a message from her younger sister. I saw the video. I'm proud of you. Renee smiled for the first time that day. The next morning, news outlets began calling. She ignored most of them. By afternoon, her company's HR department reached out not with concern, but caution. We just want to make sure this doesn't affect client perceptions, they said. That one hurt more than she expected. Renee closed her laptop and stared out the window, watching planes rise and disappear into clouds. She thought about how often she'd been taught to be quiet, to be professional, to not make waves, to be grateful just to be in the room. She thought about how first class wasn't supposed to feel like a test. Later that evening, she posted a longer message online. I didn't record to go viral. I recorded because I knew, without proof, my experience would be questioned. I wasn't loud. I wasn't aggressive. I was simply present. That was enough to make someone uncomfortable. The response was immediate. Stories poured in. Other women, other flights, other moments of disbelief, of subtle dismissal, of hands placed where they didn't belong. Renee read until her eyes burned. For the first time, the weight shifted slightly. Not gone but shared. Weeks later, a formal email arrived. The investigation had concluded. Policies would be reviewed. Training would be updated. Elaine's employment status was confidential. Renee stared at the screen. It wasn't justice, but it wasn't nothing. She closed the email and stepped outside. The sun was warm on her face. Somewhere overhead, a plane roared by, unseen. Renee lifted her chin. Next time she flew, she knew the feeling would return. The quiet tension, the readiness. But now, she also knew something else. Silence wasn't required, and belonging didn't need permission. She kept walking, steady, grounded, carrying her space with her no matter what cabin she entered.